You're 6 feet tall, that's a long way to the foot.
Okay, microphone's on.
Good to go?
Yep.
I'll call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Actually, would it be a quorum or?
We can call it to order, but there is no quorum.
Okay. Roll call.
Catherine Nyberger.
Charles Smallwood.
Jessica Bonniwell.
Steve Gribbin.
Sam Solars.
Murray. Pledge allegiance.
Oh.
Yeah, it's right there.
It's in the corner. It is.
Okay, everybody just move. I
Pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So since there's no quorum, we will not be able to do approval of agenda or minutes.
green. Yep, you're good. Okay, approval of the agenda.
No quorum, so there's no approval.
Okay. Okay, we skipped just down to new business, and we'll have a short discussion on the new draft ordinance for fences 1020-2.
Steve, did you want to take us through kind of what you prepared for tonight?
Sure. There's two general categories of discussion here. One related to side yard fences on corner lots, essentially. Property owners that have corner lots have, and not just in Montrose, but in other places, asked about being able to fence in more of their backyard out toward the road to either use it for their family or for their dogs to run or whatever. And right now, our code requires those taller fences, especially if it's a privacy fence, say 6 feet.
Excuse me, do you have a microphone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Need me to speak up? The area on the side yard is required to be a 25-foot setback like the house. And so we've had people ask about pushing that fence toward the road more closer so that they could have that privacy but still enclose their backyard. So that's one of the discussion items here. And the second relates to boundary line fences. Right now, our ordinance requires permission of the neighbor to build within a couple feet of a boundary line. And in our experience, that is a recipe for neighbor problems. If unfortunately these days neighbors don't get along very well sometimes, and they won't sign those agreements. And so the change proposed here is to allow a property owner to build all that fence all the way to their property line, not over it, obviously, onto the neighbor's property, but up to their property line, as long as it's maintenance free within that 2-foot setback. So if you got vinyl or if you've got durable weather finished metal like anodized aluminum or chain link, that kind of thing, you could build a fence along your property line without having to get your neighbor's approval for that fence. If you have wood or something that needs maintenance, then you're required to be held back so that so you can get around it and maintain the outside part of your fence. So that would be the exception. So those are the two categories. I kind of set this up to give you a little bit of background for surrounding communities, Buffalo, Monticello, Delano, how they treat it, and of these various items, particularly the side yard corner lot discussion. And all three of them have some variation of allowance to move that fence into the side yard on a corner. It depends on which community as to how much. But that would be, it's common, not just in these communities, I can tell you from my experience in other places too, that that is a common allowance. Even though a neighbor who fronts on that side street, let's say, would not be able to have a tall fence in their front yard, next door, this is where the anomaly comes in. The next door, if that's their side yard, they could push that fence out. So it gets to be a little bit wonky in certain situations, but most places have come down on the side of allowing people to enclose a little more of their backyard with the privacy fence like this. Usually, it's not all the way out to the road, out to the property line. There's a setback usually, and we've talked about 10 feet from the property line as being a reasonable setback for that taller privacy fence, which rather than the 25, which we have now. So reducing that setback. I tried to organize this on page 3 of my memo to kind of walk through kind of a series of questions, how to think about this. First one, do you think it's reasonable to allow that encroachment, some encroachment at all, is the first question. And if you do, the second one would be, do you want that fence allowance to enclose the side yard next to the fence, or next to the house, or do you want it pushed all the way behind the house? And I'm not sure if you can follow what I mean by that, but and I don't even have a good illustration of it, but if you think about a corner lot and the house facing one of the streets, some cities will say, well, you can have your fence encroachment right starting at the front line of your house backward. And some of them will say you can't do that taller fence until you hit the back line of your house. So the question is whether you want the side yard enclosed, or you want to allow that to be enclosed, or you want to prohibit that from being closed to keep the same rule that you have now directly on the side of the house. So kind of a minor point, but it's one of those things that kind of goes and comes depending on what community you're in. So it's something that we would want to address. Third item is what height. Our draft materials talk about 6 feet. That's kind of consistent with your the language in your code as being your tallest fence. And we'll talk a little bit about that height here in a minute. The fourth item then is what would setback from the street would you prefer? We suggested 10 feet. We think that's pretty consistent with a lot of other places. And then finally, are you have any interest in allowing fences to go from 6 to 7 feet? And the reason that's raised here is because the building code was recently changed to allow fences 7 feet high without getting into a building permit requirement. It used to be 6 feet, so that's why all the codes are 6 feet. But that change was made from 6 to 7. So you can allow a fence just under an administrative fence permit up to 7 feet without a building permit if your ordinance is changed to accommodate that. And I would say there's a couple reasons to consider that, because primarily, not just because building code says it's okay, but we've run into a lot of situations. I'm dealing with one in another community right now where property owner has a fence on a slope. And as that fence goes out, kind of you get, especially if you go to Menards or wherever, and you get a pre-finished panel. At the beginning, it's 6 feet, but out over here, the ground is sloping down. Now that fence is actually more than 6 feet high. And so if you got a neighbor who's not very amenable to your fence construction, they'll come and complain that your fence is taller than 6 feet now, even though you've bought a 6 foot high fence. So, or you'll get, land that's not even. And so in the intervening places, by allowing 7 feet rather than 6, you kind of avoid that measurement problem that pops up in a lot of places.
Is that from the actual ground?
Yeah, it's measured from the ground, right? So, like I said, at one point that the ground will be here, that fence will be there, and it'll be 6 feet to the top of it because you bought a 6 foot high panel. But as the ground slopes away and that fence is parallel to the earth or, the ground is sloping away from the bottom of it. So now you go down here, measure from that ground up to the top of the fence, which is sticking out straight. Now it's 6'6" or something like that, and technically that fence is no longer compliant with our code.
What about the posts? They're usually taller.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that we would probably typically work in here is to have an allowance for the posts to exceed your fence height by 6 inches, because most people will have a post cap or something like that that exceeds the top, exceeds the top line. So you would usually do that as well. But I would recommend that 7-foot change just because it avoids these little disputes over, oh, there's a gap underneath the fence, now you're 6'2", and I hate to say it, but we run into situations, like I said, I'm dealing with one right now where the neighbors are not friendly toward each other, and the one is knocking on the city's door all the time complaining about the neighbor's fence, because technically it's out of compliance because there's a little slope. So that's the last item about height. Kind of fits into this discussion. It wasn't the thing that generated our talk, but one of the other things I would recommend we look at. So that's kind of how we've attacked this. In my opinion, if you allow that enclosure to move out to a 10-foot setback rather than keep it at the 25 on that corner lot, you'd be pretty consistent with most other communities, and probably make a lot of neighbors happy because they can enclose more of their rear yard if they want to have a trampoline or pool or whatever back there. They get a little more space to have a little privacy in their backyard. And that becomes a problem on corner lots just because so much of it is set back adjacent to that side
Does
street.
that take into consideration the vision line? Or
It does, and the way that works is because the vision triangle is at the front corner of the house.
right.
So this would all be behind.
So you wouldn't have to make additional accommodations for the vision.
Right, yeah, that would still,
Right.
and that vision triangle would still apply, but
Yes.
because we're moving the fence only back to the back and side yard, not in the front, you won't run into a conflict with that
Okay, so
requirement.
that doesn't have to be part of the ordinance.
No,
No, we're not changing the front yard
and
setbacks.
it'll fit right in with the way the code is written,
Okay.
so. That's a good question, because that definitely, if you were out in front, that would be obviously a potential problem. But you won't have problems with vision at the corners on these lots with that fence, so it's still far enough back.
Can I ask questions, or are you through?
Of course.
In older communities, fencing is in the deed of the property, the boundary lines, and it dictates that there's a fence or a garden fence or dividing fence or whatever. In Montrose, we built new homes in pastures or cornfields, and how are these fencing issues going to be recorded for resale down the line?
Well, just like any other property improvement, the person has to get a permit to construct their fences. There still is a administrative permit. They have to come in and show what kind of fence they're going to build and where it's going to be on their property. And then once they build it, it's there just like if they had a shed or a garage or whatever, it's on the property. The next person in title takes the property as it is.
So that is recorded on the title.
Well, it's not recorded on the title. It's just an existing condition of the property that the buyer would
Be aware of, and
they would be aware of, because they would have notice of it when
And
they.
it would be also on a survey.
It might be on a survey. It depends on where they're building the fence. If they're building on the property line,
yeah.
This code requires them to have a survey to prove their property line and the location. So yes, you're right. It would show up on the survey in that case. Yeah.
On a property line fence.
Fences are notorious for not being exactly built where they're supposed to be, but that's just.
No, I know, but now a wood fence that's built on a property line, who is responsible for maintaining that?
Well, this code would require wood fences to be set back a little bit so they can get around that. Not, so you can't build a wood fence right up to the property line.
A lot of communities do allow that. A lot of the western communities.
Well, that's where we were getting into a sticky situation with having neighbors sign off and agree to have that fence on the property line. Yeah, that's part of the issues.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
somewhere down the line, that person doesn't own the house anymore, and then it gets ugly.
right. And if the problem with,
If it's on the deed, I mean, if it's recorded when somebody purchases a home and that privacy fence is on the property line. I mean, this happens all over in the inner suburbs.
again, it wouldn't be on the deed. The survey would show it as an improvement to the property, but it wouldn't be, it's actually kind of rare for fences to show up in the chain of title somehow. They would show up on a survey. But I think the situation you were referring to is if somebody bought with covenants that had specific relationship to what fence requirements were. But that's very rare now unless there's an association situation where then there's usually, in that situation, usually then there's a company that's charged with maintaining the landscape and the fence and everything.
But a 2-foot setback for a privacy fence can be troublesome also. I mean, that is the fence owner's property, that 2 feet. They can store kayaks, they can store lumber, they can store Menards pails full of doggy doo. They can just put whatever they want out there. It's their property. And that's what you're looking at as an adjoining neighbor.
Correct, but there's still nuisance requirements. You're not
Right,
allowed to violate.
That's like accumulation in the open and some nuisance
Pardon?
violation. That is like a nuisance violation, like accumulation in the open of things that just shouldn't be sitting on your lawn.
Yes, but we don't enforce those, you know.
Well, we do by complaint.
Pardon?
We do by complaint,
Yeah.
and we try our best to do that, but
There's
sometimes it's
there's
a
no
battle.
perfect solution for fence rules just because they do. There's neighbors will find reasons to not either take care of their own property or complain about their neighbor. So that we're actually, this code is eliminating one of those areas where we get neighbor disputes, which is that.
No, that's good.
And we can't, I haven't run across a fence ordinance that eliminates all those problems, but, so we're,
Trying.
we do know that,
But-
people will abuse their privileges,
Yes, they will.
unfortunately.
They
so,
will, and they do.
Yep,
But say my neighbor built a privacy fence and it was 2 feet back. And I wanted to build a privacy fence and I didn't like their fence. So I can build a fence and have a 2-foot setback and have 4 feet,
correct.
a 4-foot alley.
Yeah, there'll be an alleyway through there.
Pardon?
There'll be an alleyway through there then that
And
gives
there
you
are
both
places where
access.
you'll find that situation in some places, yes.
Okay.
It's a little odd,
I
but,
mean, that's just, I wouldn't build a fence, but I mean, it's just,
yeah.
No.
And that's becoming less and less common as fence materials have changed. The advent of vinyl fencing has actually changed that quite a bit because everything used to be wood for a privacy fence. And there was always how are they gonna maintain the other side of it? And where are they gonna put it on the property? How are they gonna mow outside of it? Those kinds of things. But vinyl's changed that a little bit so we can have maintenance-free right up to the property line, hopefully avoid those little 4-foot alleys and avoid neighbors having to sign off on their neighbor's fence.
well,
and
that's a
those kinds of things.
disaster.
So,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, that's
again,
what we talked about.
we're not solving every problem,
Not solve all the
admittedly,
problems,
but
yeah.
we're getting closer, I think, so.
Yeah, I was-
Well, how do, vinyl fencing just, it doesn't seem very friendly to me. I mean, wood fence is lovely, it ages, but vinyl, is it becoming very popular? I don't see a lot of it in Montrose.
Yeah, it's becoming quite a bit more popular. And they're improving vinyl from the times when it first came out. When vinyl fencing was first available, it was pretty much all just glary white material, but they've actually developed more color and more texture,
More durability.
more durability, and avoided the kind of that glary sheen that not avoided, I mean, you can still buy that, but they've created materials where they're a little more wood-like, although I'm a wood guy too. I like the natural material, but the vinyl has become much more popular just because of that. And you don't have to stain it. You don't have to, it'll last. And
No, I understand. I was just asking.
yeah,
The one point I did bring up with Jessica before the meeting is we do have an administrative permit that goes with putting a fence up. With everything going on with the construction, lack of extra help and everything, especially this summer, it's probably not going to change. One suggestion I'd make is have West Metro do the inspections. I know they do it for a lot of the surrounding communities.
Yeah. I will check with the inspector and see how much that'll cost and kind of the logistics around that. They can
Yeah,
pick
just-
that up for us.
Yeah, just add it on to whatever administrative fee there is. That way, Dan
that
doesn't
way-
have something else on his plate.
Well,
right
yeah,
now.
and you're not having city employees determining where people can put a fence, so,
Yeah, and solving monument locations.
right, and that can be an issue, so.
Okay, I have another question. Staff recommends the 2-foot setback. Now, who is staff? I know it's you.
I probably used that phrase in my staff report, and it's everybody who is not a public official, like a planning commissioner, so Jessica, even myself as a consultant, or that would be my language, though. So,
It's your language.
right.
Having the 2-foot setback, is that a pretty common?
It still is a common requirement for, what would you say, non-maintenance free materials. Just so you have to be able to get around to that outside of the fence and repair it, stain it, whatever it may need. And 2 feet's enough so you can still get a mower around it and mow your property outside of that space. You don't
What
need.
about the people that don't maintain it? There is this setback and they don't maintain it and they leave it up to the neighbor to take care of that property.
That's not an issue.
Huh?
It's their fence, and it's up to them to maintain it.
But they don't maintain it.
Well, again, we go back to the nuisance ordinance that they have to. It is their responsibility.
At some point, if it becomes a nuisance, the neighbor is likely to complain. And it's just like if they didn't take care of their shed and their shed was starting to fall down, at some point, somebody's going to complain about that. And it'll be a violation that they have to take care of
went
as an
through it for 5
enforcement
years.
action.
Pardon?
I went through it for 5 years, till the
Well-
storm knocked it down.
My neighbor has a wood fence on the property line. And that was installed. And they've never, ever, ever looked at the fence or done any repair. I weed it, I mow, I take care of everything because it's on the property line.
Yeah.
So fences are problematic.
They are a problem.
You know,
And there was a time that they did not require fence permits and didn't really have a fence ordinance, so there wasn't any regulation around it.
yeah, but that's their side of the story. Across the street, people have the setback, and those fences were installed before this person that you're referring to. So it's just
I wasn't here then, so I don't know the story.
It's a problem.
But
They put it up when the.
I know that
ordinance
I know we do have
was-
some problems because
Yeah,
of
you know,
the
but-
before time
But you're
too,
gonna have people like this
always.
always.
Always will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You get in the old neighborhoods, the fence goes all the way around the property.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
Well, fences are difficult to maintain. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as far as mowing,
Yep.
it's much easier just to have a lawn.
Yeah, but then you have pets and kids and
Yeah, I know.
obnoxious parties and,
Noise, but fence doesn't,
Fence doesn't do the noise, yeah.
Doesn't quite
buffers it
do
a
the
bit.
trick, yeah.
well, it's good to address this, for sure.
So, yeah, throw some more ideas. I mean, even with the public hearing coming up, no matter what, if everybody was here tonight, no matter what we would decide on, it's not set in stone.
No,
So,
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to do some research in the next month, and we'll come back and we'll have a public hearing and discuss it further and decide what we want to
well,
do.
is this the ordinance that you're gonna present at the public hearing? This is the information that will be presented at the
Yes,
public hearing.
This is what I would expect to, unless I
unless we,
heard that
yeah,
there was some other change that we ought to consider or something, yes.
But it's just the residential fence portion.
just residential
Correct.
fencing.
Which simplifies it.
Yes.
you know, yeah, the industrial and all that is a whole different
It's a
bag of
separate,
worms.
yep, that's a separate issue.
Yeah, like I said, I just like to see that inspection thing, if you can
Yep,
check into that.
I agree. I think that would be a great thing to have.
We don't need all the guys out on vacation at the same time because they redlined.
Do you have a lot of people coming in on fence issues as far as complaining?
We have a few, yeah,
Fair amount,
yeah.
okay, just wondered.
Yeah, because the initial phase one, there was no real
Any sort
fence
of,
rules
yeah,
when I
anything.
moved in. Because it was cornfield on one side, farm and stuff on the other. And
And did whatever you wanted, I guess.
yeah, it was a free-for-all.
Yes, but I was at the public hearing when they.
When they
established-
adopted the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know, even though no one can tell me the date, I know when it was pretty much established. Which is neither here or there, I'm just saying.
I started complaining in 2001.
I was gonna say, it had to have been done before 2012, because that's when we had it all codified, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause I remember Charlie Nelson said, well, if it bugs you that much, we got openings. Here I am.
What about material? I mean, are you going to say it has to be in one material? I mean, I've seen people where they've had vinyl, wood.
It's like enforcing yard art. What's yard art?
Well, what's
Yeah.
fence art, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, I guess I
Well,
would
we're not going
assume
to-
they would do it in all one material, but I guess they don't.
There's no, yeah,
Don't you have it in the ordinance that it does have to be all one material?
you can try, but I don't believe it would work out real well if we tried to get that strict with it.
No, I mean, on 1 yard, say I put up 1 panel of vinyl, I put up 1 panel of wood, I put up 1 panel of chain link. I'm talking about my property. Shouldn't I be required to do all wood or all vinyl or all chain link instead of having 3 different fences along my property line?
It seems like common sense to me, I don't
Sounds like
know.
common sense, but as soon as you call it out,
I
there's
know.
gonna be. I mean, there's houses with 3 different kinds of siding on them.
Yeah,
They look nice, but
There's houses
difference.
with 2 different colors on over by you.
yeah. Yeah, they got shakers and lap and it's all different
Oh, 3
colors.
different, right down the middle.
oh, yeah.
Well, them are
the
twin homes.
twin homes, yeah.
Them don't count.
They do count, that's one.
No, they're grandfathered.
Well, what are they gonna do with fences? They're gonna have a vinyl fence and then they're gonna have a wood fence.
Can we have them have a consistent material for the fence on the property? Is that a thing? I mean,
You probably could have that. I don't know of any place, I shouldn't say that. I do know a few places that would get that.
I mean, not
down
that we would
to detail.
require them all to be in one thing, but that on one property, that you would build it all chain link or all wood or all vinyl.
I would say the
Seems-
difficulty there is that you will have fences, you will have properties that have a neighbor that has chain link on one side and a neighbor on the other side that has, say, a vinyl privacy fence.
The guy in the back has wood.
Now they want to put the back, yeah, they want to enclose their back and they'll want to do wood or aluminum or something else.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
so it's hard to,
I could see someone, like vinyl on the sides, and if they back up to like a wetland area, decide that they want to put a chain link back there instead. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I guess we've had people ask if they can do like a chain link in their front yard and then like a wood privacy fence in their backyard.
yeah,
Why not?
Right, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, well, I think we can just leave that then.
I can see the problem.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion points for this evening or on this?
None that I can think of. I said none that I can think of. She asked if there was any other issues that we can discuss on this tonight, or really can't do anything even if we do.
Well, we're not going to make any decisions.
No, we're just having a discussion.
Well, I do have, if you're going to have the posts, are you going to have that 12 inches? Is that going to be 8 feet instead of 7 feet? Or is it going to be 7.5 feet?
It was 6 we mentioned.
yeah.
6 inches, I think.
We
said.
would usually suggest that post caps can extend 6 inches above the top line of the fence.
Is that in the ordinance?
That's not in here yet. I wanted to,
We can, yeah.
but I will add that to
That
this.
should be added.
Yep. Well, we'll get that change made before the public hearing.
Okay. Anything else? Any thoughts? All right. There's nothing further. Any additional updates that you have with
we have any.
anybody? Nobody? No?
We're,
I see that one property is for sale that we had a meeting on over east of town.
The subway?
No, that's Steamboat Lane.
Yes.
That property's for sale.
Yes, Ron came in to City Hall the other day and said that he is trying to sell the property to another developer.
To another developer?
Yeah, I told him that his preliminary plat is good for a year in, before it expires, but, yeah. Unfortunately, he's not going forward with the project at this time.
Well, with prices, little guys
And
can't
he
make it
was,
right now.
yeah, and he was kind of an independent developer, so, yeah.
Well, he was a really nice guy.
Yeah, and unfortunately, yeah, it just didn't work out. So he did put the land up for sale, and he's working on getting somebody to take it over and hopefully to build those plats that he got approval for. Because they'll need to submit a final plat before 1 year has passed, so.
And that sticks with it then, or can somebody else come in and say, okay, we want to do this?
They can come in and do something different, yeah.
Okay.
How many acres is that?
Oof, I don't remember.
it's 5 or 6.
Yeah, something like that. 6, I thought.
Okay. Other updates, our next meeting will be Wednesday, July 13th, 2022, held at the Montrose Community Center here. That will be a public hearing, or is that?
Yes, it'll be a public hearing.
Okay. In regards to the fence ordinance, and
At that time, will we approve minutes?
Yes, we'll
Yeah,
approve all the
we
old
can-
minutes and stuff, yep.
yep. All right, with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:35.